everyone, welcome to Angie's Answers. Today I'm going to show you how to make these adorable fabric baskets. This is the one that we're going to be using today, the fabrics that we're using. This is the completed one. So you kind of get to see it's like that magic recipe where you get to see it done before you get to see how to do it. But I wanted to show you these adorable fabric totes. So Tina at our Elkhorn store, she made these for all different times of year. So this is a cute little 4th of July one. We've got a cute Christmas one here. She's got a cute Halloween one. And this one, when she did this, she made sure that the bats that she quilted are facing up this way and then facing up this way too. So there's a lot of tips and tricks that go along with these. These baskets are perfect for so many things. They're the perfect cutter to hold a rotary, or perfect size to hold your rotary cutter, mail in the kitchen, recipe cards, your TV remote controls, next to you when you're sewing to keep all your pins and measuring tapes and all that stuff all organized. So these are just so adorable. We absolutely love them, and I hope you enjoy this video. It is a little bit of a long one, but I hope you enjoyed the video on how to make these adorable fabric totes. Hi everyone, welcome back to Angie's Answers. Today I wanted to come and show you a fun project that you could do either on a long arm with the assistance of a long arm, or you can do it completely on your domestic machine. But you know me, if I can do anything on my long arm, I'm going to use my long arm to do that. So what we're going to make today is a mini little fabric tote. I saw this pattern. There's a ton of different patterns out there. I just wanted to come and share the techniques that I used to make this and hopefully help inspire you to make one for yourselves. These fabric totes are so cute. You can use them for so many different things, and just the fabric combinations, they're just adorable. So if you attended the virtual long arm retreat that I was part of with my Quilting Central podcast, so a couple things in there. If you haven't heard, I am part of a podcast called Quilting Central Podcast. You can find it here on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, any of the places that you normally get your podcasts from. It's a joint effort with myself, Kathy Thayer from Fabric Bash, and Julie Mercer down in Two Chicks Quilting in Ganado, Texas. So the three of us are doing a fun podcast. If you haven't checked that out, check that out. So with those two girls with the podcast, we did a virtual long arm retreat in August of 2025. People could join in from everywhere, and this was the project that I was showing. So I wanted to be able to put this video out there after the retreat, so that way if you didn't quite get it done or wanted to make another one, then you'd have the full tutorial on how to make one too. So this was my mystery project for that August virtual retreat. We'll be doing more virtual treats, so best thing you can do is just to keep up, check out our Quilting Central podcast, or we do have a website, quiltingcentralpodcast.com, and you can email us info@quiltingcentralpodcast. Anyway, let's get to our project. So what we're using for this was a charm pack, so 5-inch squares. This one is from Riley Blake. It's called Bake Sale 2. It's a Lori Holt fabric. I like using these charm packs because then you can cut each one and you'll get 4 of those mini charms. So what we need is those 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares, and you're gonna need 32 of them. So I have a whole variety from the charm pack of these mini charms, or you can buy mini charms to start, but this was from a charm pack that we cut in half both ways to get 2.5 by 2.5 squares, and you're gonna need 32 of these mini charms for this project. If you can have non-directional fabric, that would be great. So like, see how this is non-directional, this is non-directional, but there are a couple of fabrics, I know they're in this pack, that are directional. When you're doing this mini fabric tote, if you have that directional fabric, you have to be a little careful of how you're placing it when you're doing your layout part, but we'll talk about that. So 32 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. You are also going to need 2 rectangles that are 3 by 7.5. Then you're going to need 1 piece that's going to be your lining. This is going to show, so make sure that you like the fabric, that it's going to coordinate with your charm squares. So this will show, this will be the lining for your fabric tote. And this is 12.5 by 12.5 to start. Then you're gonna take your mini charms and you're gonna start laying them out. So what we need is we need 1 set that's going to be 6 charms wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and then it's gonna be too tall. 6. So I've got 6 by 2. So this is going to get sewn together to make this right here. So it's 6 across by 2 tall. And can you see how this one is directional? And then these two, this green and red, those are directional too. So I had to be careful when I was laying this out because this is going to be like the one side of my fabric tote. I wanted to make sure that the directional fabric was at the bottom of this set. Then you're going to take more of your mini charms and you're going to lay these out so it is 4 wide. So only 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 high. This is going to be the bottom of that tote. So if you don't love some of the fabrics, maybe put them on the bottom. Then you're going to sew those together and this is going to make the bottom. So it's 4 across by 2 tall. Then you're going to take the rest of them and lay these out. This is going to create another 6 by 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The difference with this one, this is going to be like the other side of the tote. So that first one was going to be like our left side of our tote. This is going to be our right side of our tote. So this one, when I sewed it, I made sure that those directional fabrics were opposite. So see, this blue is directional and the bottom is technically going to be like at my top of how I'm going to use this. This red is also directional and that bottom, it's upside down. Those words are upside down. And then this green one in this corner is also directional and those words are upside down. So that was the only tricky part, that if you do have directional fabric, just to make sure that you have one where all the directional fabric is going to be facing the top. And then your second one, the directional fabric, it'll be upside down, if that makes sense. Sorry, it'll make sense once we get over to the machine. So sew those all together. I did, of course, iron all of my seams, pressing those nice and flat. And the trick, of course, with having one pressed one way, one pressed the other way, so that way I could nest these seams in here. So if you can get all of these sewn together, doesn't matter if you want to do your verticals first or your horizontal first, however you like to piece these together, but you're going to have the one set that is 6 by 2. Your bottom of your tote is going to be 4 by 2, and then the other side of that tote will be 6 by 2 as well. So get those all sewn together. Then the next thing that you need to prepare is going to be these rectangles. So these are going to create our handles. So this is what my finished handle looks like. So this is again that 3 by 7.5. So first thing I need to do is fold this in half and press this. And I've got my Laura Star nice and hot. So I hope you can still hear me. So I am just folding that in half. Let me burn my Laura Star. So I'm going to press that in half. So I just folded it in half and pressed it in half so then I get this nice crease in the middle here. Then I'm going to take my raw edges and fold those in to that center seam. So I'm going to hold that there and fold this raw edge in. So then my raw edges are lined up with that center seam. Let me press that quick. Get those lined up right on that center seam. I'm just going to do one at a time. So I'm folding the one raw edge to my center seam and press that. Then I'm going to turn it around and take my other raw edge and press that. So it's going to look like this. Then I'm going to do one more fold in half so then we have no raw edges on the outside. Let me set this real quick. Perfect. Then once you've got this all ironed, you're going to take it to your sewing machine and you're going to sew a scant 1/4 inch along this left edge and along that right edge to seal that up. So you've got to prepare your handles too. So I have 2 prepared handles as well. Then I, like I said, like to do everything I can on my long arm. So I have a backing fabric. This is not going to be shown. So I know this is a real bright pink. Doesn't really match. It kind of matches, but not really. Real bright pink. So this, I need to be able to use something on my machine to stabilize all of this so then I can quilt this together. So this backing fabric is just to load on the frame. It's not going to be shown. The lining is going to cover up this fabric. I also feel like putting this extra backing fabric in it makes that tote just a little more stable too. So this backing fabric is 18 by 18. And then I also have just a piece of batting cut. This is an 80-20 batting. You could also use 100% cotton batting. Any scrap of batting that you've got is going to work great. So this scrap of batting is also 18 by 18. So now we're going to take my 3 sets that I've got, my 2 2x6s and my 1 2x4. I'm going to show you how to put these together over on the long arm. If you don't want to do this on the long arm, you could of course piece these together. So if you're going to piece them together on your domestic, here, hold on, let me slide all of this down a little bit so you can see that better. So here is my set of 6. That's going to be my top. Then I would take this set of 4 and lay it on there, center it up. You are going to have these 2 extra, because remember this is 6x4 and 6x2 and 4x2. So center this on there and sew that down. Then you would flip this open. After that would be seamed. You would take this one, pay attention to the direction. So make sure that you've got the bottom of the directional fabric at the top. Then you'd lay that on top of there too and sew that down. So you can create this on your domestic machine if you want to, but I want to show you how to do that piece as you go on your long arm too. So I will meet you over. Here we are at my long arm. So let's get this loaded. As you know, the way that I love to load is with the quick zip system. That's the zipper system that we originated here at the Quilting Connection. Makes my life a million times easier. So I did just find the center of this project and attach it to a backing fabric zipper on both sides. So I know the zipper looks funny because it's really long, but that's what I like to tell people. It doesn't matter what size project you put on your long arm, especially with the zipper system, as long as you find that center, it's gonna center it on the frame here. So I'm gonna take my bottom zipper here and I'm gonna take it down and go in between these 2 roller bars. So I went below this one, so it's gonna attach to my belly bar, to my backing fabric bar. Then I'm gonna come down here and attach that zipper and zip that all the way across. Okay, then I'm gonna take my top zipper up here, run that through the neck of my machine head, attach those 2 together, and zip that all the way across. Oh, I need to loosen up my canvas, just a second. Okay. And let's get that centered on our frame there. Make sure everything's nice and flat and nice and tight. Then I've got my batting. I'm just gonna set my batting right on top of there. Make sure that's nice and smooth. All right, now we are going to piece on the long arm. So I'm going to find, I need to take this middle one. That's gonna be the bottom of our tote. So this is the 4x2. And I'm gonna place that about in the middle of this sandwich. Let me bring you guys in a little closer. There. So I'm gonna place that about in the middle. Before I do any piecing, I'm just gonna double check that when I seam that, I'm gonna have enough both ways. So I'm gonna scooch everything down just a hair. There. That way I've got some excess up here and some excess up here. So first thing I need to do is I need to stitch down this middle part here. So I'm just gonna go right around the perimeter and secure that and stitch that down. I do have just the regular foot that came with the machine. Let me turn these lights off so you can see better. There we go. So I just have the regular foot that comes with your Handi Quilter machine, your 1/4 inch foot. That's what I'm gonna use for my 1/4 inch guide. If you do have the square feet from Handi Quilter, those are the the solid edge foot. So instead of a round edge, it's going to be a straight edge. Those are pretty helpful too. So I'm just going to start in my top corner up here. I'm going to line up my foot on the edge of my fabric, bring up my bobbin thread. I am using a blending thread, so I've just got this light pink on there. I'm going to lock my threads together. So I hit my tack button to lock those threads. Then I'm going to turn my channel lock on and I'm just gonna stitch this down. Turn my channel lock off, switch to my vertical, put my horizontal back on, and then vertical one more time. Perfect, then I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna bring up my bobbin thread, so I'm gonna make that nice long tail, go back and do one more stitch so I can get my bobbin thread to the top and cut that all off. I did have little pins in there, so that's what I pulled out, was just a little pin to mark which one that was. Okay, so now what I wanna do is I wanna take this piece, and this is the one with the directional fabric, is gonna be at the bottom. I'm gonna take my marking pin out so I know which one that is, get my machine out of the way, and I'm gonna lay this right sides together. So this directional fabric with the bottom is where I'm gonna sew. I need to try to center these seams now and kind of nest those seams so you can feel underneath where those seams are, and I wanna try to get those nested together, just like you do when you're piecing. And if it helps to put one hand underneath, you can do that. So I just wanna feel where those seams are and get those as close to nesting as possible. Then I'm gonna take my machine over here, and we're gonna start on this left corner again. My foot is lined up right along the edge of the fabric back there, so I'm gonna bring up my bobbin thread. Come on, stay on top. Double check my seams one more time. I like how that looks. That looks great. Hold tight to all of this, do my tack to lock my threads together, turn my channel lock on, and stitch these down. Now when I get to these seams, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm not flipping any of the fabric over. Perfect. Just straight across like that. And again, if you don't want to do this piecing on your long arm, you can do this on your domestic machine too. So I'm going to stop here and bring up my bobbin thread. I'm going to turn that channel lock off so I can make my long tail, come back and do one more stitch, and then cut that off. A really good tip I love to give people: every time you cut an ending thread, go find where you started and cut those starting threads off too. Then we can open this up, flip that back and open this up. I do have my Laura Star lift also warmed up, so let me burst this. Perfect. Then I'm just gonna iron that seam out. Awesome. Okay, now this one is the one that technically this is my top, but these directional fabrics are wrong side up. So this one is going to lay on top of here like that. So that way when we flip this over, the writing is going to be towards the bottom of the tote, because remember, this is the center of our tote. So this piece, the directional fabric, that writing, the bottom of the writing is facing the bottom of the tote. And then this piece, the directional fabric, the bottom of that writing is facing the bottom of that tote. So I hope that makes sense. Let me take that part off. Then I'm going to lay this again so they're right sides together, and I'm just looking at where my seams are, peeking underneath of here to really match those seams up. That looks great. Bring our machine over. I do also want to pay attention to here where my sides are. So I want to make sure that these edges are all matched up as well. Perfect. All right. Let me bring up my bobbin thread over here. Lock those tails together with my tie-off button. Turn my channel lock on. And we're gonna stitch this down. And I'm just lining up my foot on the edge of that fabric there, so I'm sewing that 1/4 of an inch away. And I'm just kind of back tacking over the seams just to give them a little more stability to here. So that's as far as I can go. I'm gonna take my channel lock off, make that nice long tail, come back and do one more stitch. Anytime I cut where I ended, I find where I started and cut those tails off too. Let's peel that back, and then let's hit this with our Laura Star too. All right, now I need to stitch the perimeter of it. So if you did these seams on your domestic machine, you're just gonna place this down on your long arm, stitch down this perimeter, and then we're gonna quilt this. So let's start, get my bobbin thread out. This is already stitched down right here from our middle when we started, so that's where I'm gonna start. I do need to make sure that these seams are flipped under and held under too. They're looking great. So I'm gonna start here, and I'm just stitching a scant 1/4 of an inch away from this edge. I am gonna put my channel lock on up here at the top, maybe. Okay, channel lock, there we go. And this is a scant 1/4 of an inch because I want this totally hidden when we put our lining on. Take my channel lock off. Then I'm just gonna sneak where I already stitched, sneak down, go to this edge, same thing, scant 1/4 of an inch. I can turn channel lock on here. I like the channel lock on for the longer ones, just to make sure that I am catching everything. I need to go up just a bit. There we go. Perfect. Okay, all secured, so I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna bring up my bobbin thread. Anytime I cut where I ended, I'm gonna find where I started and cut those tails off too. So now, quilt is desired. Quilt this however you want to. I'm gonna bring you in closer so you can see my ProStitcher screen. We're gonna lay out a design in ProStitcher because I want a nice tight design on this cute little basket. So let me bring you in. 2 things before we start quilting. I want to measure this. So we are 12.5 high and 12.5 wide, because we always need to know our size before we can put in our pattern for our ProStitcher or your whatever your computer system is. Second thing is I want to make sure that if you do have the glide foot or scoop foot, the spoon foot, whatever yours is called, change that before you do any ProStitcher quilting. So I'm going to use my wrench here to change my foot. Sometimes it's easier if you are off, because then this can fall down. Oh, my handlebar's in your way. Let me get my handlebar out of your way. There we go. Sometimes it's easier to change the foot when you're off the quilt. You can also lift up on that bar, is spring loaded, to get that foot off. Then I'm just gonna set my glide foot on there, and I'm holding pressure up as I'm tightening that. This is one of the older glide feet, so it doesn't have the metal on the top, so I have to be careful how much I tighten it so I don't break that plastic. Okay, so measure your project, and if you have a glide foot, put your glide foot on, and then let's start laying out our design. So I'm going to bring you in closer. Here's my ProStitcher Premium. I'm going to come to File, Design, Open. I am on my D drive on my stick, so these are designs that I've purchased. My C drive would be designs that come with the machine. And Ann Bright has a really cute flower shape that's similar to the flowers that are in this fabric. So it's called Tinker Flowers B2B, this one right here. And I'm gonna open that up. I just love this one. I think it's so cute, and I think it'll be really cute quilted, nice and small too. So this one opens up 11 by 10, but remember our whole project is only 12 by 12. So I wanna make this pretty small. So I'm gonna come in and modify this design. I'm gonna resize it. I'm gonna change the height of the design, and I'm going to lock it so then it changes proportionately for me. So our current height is 10 inches tall. Let's take this in half. Let's see what a 5-inch tall row would look like. This button here is your 1-to-1 ratio to see how big those are. And then you can also turn on your grid to be able to measure that. So let me get this flower on one of these lines. So these dark lines are 1 inch. So this flower is about 1 3/4 inches. I think it could almost be just a little bit smaller because remember our squares are 2.5 by 2.5. And I like that design to really fill in there, especially with this mini basket. I want it to be nice and dense and nice and tight. So let's try maybe like a 3-inch row. I know that's going to be a lot of quilting. Ooh, that makes those guys only 1 inch. I think that's a little too small. Let's go back in the middle and try a 4-inch. I like that. So that means that these little flowers here are going to be about 1.5 inches tall. I hope all that steps make sense. This is, again, personal preference. You can lay this out however you like to lay it out, but I really like using my grid for my 1-inch reference, and I like using this 1-to-1 button. That's gonna show you the scale and the size it's gonna quilt out to. So now I've got this the size I want. I'm gonna turn my grid off, maybe. There we go. And then I'm gonna come to my repeat tab at the top, and I'm gonna start adding horizontal repeats. So that gives me a total, oh, sorry, I bumped you. A total of like 8 3/4. Remember, my project is 12.5. I also need to make sure to touch my point-to-point button. It's gonna seal these up so then it just continues to keep quilting. Let's add another repeat, and that gets me to 13. I wanna be able to play where this is placed on our project, so I'm gonna add one more. It never hurts to have more. It is total personal preference. I like to have more though. So then I'm gonna add a vertical repeat. There is a little bit of space in between those rows that I don't love. So I'm gonna use my minus button for my gap and try to bring those a little closer together, but I have to pay attention to where it touches. So I'm gonna get those nice and close. That helps reduce that gap vertically. I have 7 inches in height right now, so I need to keep adding another repeat. That gave me 11, so I'm gonna add one more. So I'm 17.5 by 15 right now. More than I need, but that's gonna help me when we're doing our cropping to make sure that I've got excess and I can place that pattern exactly where I want it to be. So I have enough pattern laid out left to right, and I have enough pattern more than what I need laid out top to bottom. So I wanna baseline these repeats together to lock that to be one pattern. You'll see that your repeats changed over here. So it said I had my 4 rows, now it just says 1 vertically and 1 horizontally too. Okay, let's get this placed on our quilt. So I'm gonna back my machine up. I'm gonna tilt you guys down a little bit too, so hopefully you can see both. And we're gonna come and find our top left corner up there. So I'm a little bit to the left, and you can run down your whole piece if you want to. Just make sure that you're like the opening of that glide foot at least 1/4 inch to the left of the design, and then I'm just a little bit above. I'm about the same distance above. If you look on my screen, that's where my crosshairs are, that's where my needle is. I need that design to move to the top left corner of my project. The easiest way to do that is to do your modify tab, reposition in the ribbon, and then over here you have this button that says top left. And that will take the design and shift it to that top left corner for you. I'm gonna start building my area to show the ProStitcher where I want this to stitch. Normally when we're doing edge to edge, we would mark the top left corner and the bottom right corner. So you're just doing the 2 corner. You can do that if you want to, but if you don't wanna waste this batting and backing, we can do a multi-point all the way around. So it's a total personal preference. I don't mind wasting that little bit of batting, so I'm gonna mark this top left corner, then we're gonna pull down and mark the bottom right corner. So I'm gonna come to my area tab and touch 2 corner. That's gonna ding at you to let you know that it put that dot exactly where my needle is now. Let me back you up just a hair so you can see the whole project. There we go. Then I just like to double check that it's gonna come across that whole top edge. I'm gonna come down this way, and same thing, I wanna be just below this bottom of my project and to the right of the project. Then I'm gonna touch that 2 corner button again, and that created the box on my screen for the size of our project. I don't know if you can see those numbers, but it tells me I'm 12.89 by 12.77. The next step I want to do is I want to make this design fit just a little bit better inside of the perimeter of my box here, because see how there's just a couple little holes? So that's why I like to have extra left and right and extra top and bottom. So I'm going to come to my Modify tab. My reposition tool is still on, and I'm going to use this nudge feature. So I'm going to nudge it up, and I'm purposely going to cut off some of the flower. So see how I have a lot of flower down here, but I'm getting holes down there. So I'm going to try to get this where I've got partial flower at the top and about the same of the partial flower at the bottom. Then I'm going to shift it to the left and try to do that same thing. So I can get some partial flowers on both. Oh, I can get full flowers. So I can get pretty much full flowers on that left edge and about the same of that full flower on the right-hand side. Let me bring you in closer so you can see that a little better. So I just used these nudge arrows till I was happy with how it looks. So I have partial flowers up there at the top, partial flowers down there at the bottom, but I have full flowers on this left edge and full flowers on this right edge. So now, because I don't have to move this project, it's gonna quilt the entire thing. I'm gonna crop out everything that is along this outer perimeter of my project. So we're gonna come to our cropping tool. We're gonna crop everything that is outside, and we're gonna close up those edges with that edges button, so then it just continues to stitch for you. Anytime you do a crop, you should do a baseline. I'm gonna leave this pink area on the screen because I don't have to move my quilt at all. If I was doing like a full edge to edge quilt and I was gonna roll and advance the quilt, then I would clear out the pink area and I would come into my area tab and I would create quilting space, but we don't need to with this project. It is also always a good idea to save. So I'm gonna go File, Save, and Selected. I have this folder that I created on my stick, because remember my D drive is my USB stick. So I created this folder that says quilt layouts. If you need to create a folder, you have this button right here, that plus button. That's gonna help you create folders. I like to change this name because that name doesn't really mean anything to me. So I'm gonna call this Mini Tote. Oops, tire. Tote. Oh boy. I'm gonna get it. T-O-T-E. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. There we go. Mini Tote. And we're gonna save that. It really honestly doesn't matter what that name is, because once this is all quilted, you're gonna delete that file anyway. So let's come to our ProStitcher tab. Everything is turned on for me over here. So now I am ready to run this design. When I hit my run button, nothing's gonna happen. It's just gonna verify my settings and tells me to make sure my needle is up. My thread is still above the glide foot. So let me move. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Let me bend you down just a little bit so you can kind of see both. So I'm just gonna take a stitch anywhere and let go of that, so then I can pull my thread below my glide foot. Then I'm gonna tell the ProStitcher to go ahead and proceed. It's gonna move to the starting point for this first row. It takes that first stitch. Can you see that okay? Let me slide you down just a hair. So it moved to the starting point, took the first stitch. You still can't see. There we go. Then I'm gonna hold tight to both of these threads. I'm gonna tell it to resume. It's gonna take those slow stitches to lock our tails together. Then it's gonna start working on this row. Sorry, I'm gonna pause this for just a second because I should change my stitch size. With this tighter quilting that we're doing, I want my stitches per inch to be closer together. So on my settings, I'm gonna go to my stitches per inch and I'm gonna up that to 14. I want closer stitches. Sorry, I forgot to mention that before. All right, go ahead and resume now. There we go. So I'm gonna let this work on quilting this first row. Once it gets to the other end, it's gonna stop, give me that long jump pause so I can bring up my bobbin thread and quilt this. I will come back to you once this whole project is all done quilted. It is all done being quilted and it is just so adorable. These little flowers on here are just so cute. I absolutely love it. So next steps, we're gonna take this off the frame. We're gonna trim right along this edge and then we'll start building the tote. I am taking my zipper off here. So I took it off the frame, just pulling the pins off that's holding that zipper on. One tip, if you are using the zippers, always make sure that when you take a zipper off of a backing that you re-zip these back together. So then when you go to grab your next project, you know if you have a full zipper, that's for a backing, and then just that half piece is for your quilt top. I have a bunch of videos too for attaching fabrics to the zippers as well. So now I'm gonna take and we're gonna trim exactly where this was quilted. So I'm just gonna come in with my rotary cutter and get right along the edge there. And then I do need to trim out this notched out piece here too. So let me get right in there. And I'm trying not to cut any of the extra fabric away. I'm just going right along the edge. Oops, I missed a little bit there. There we go. So we'll trim this all the way up. I missed again. There we go. Scissors might have been easier there. Okay, so we are all trimmed. All those scraps are going to be gone. Now you should have your lining piece. This would have been 12.5 by 12.5. So lay this down first and then take your quilted piece and lay it right on top of there. One other tip is if you take a pin and put a pin along this top edge of the basket here, so you know that that's the center of this top edge. I'm also gonna take a pin and put it in about the center of this lining. So that way these two pieces, I will always know that I can match these two pins back together, and those are my original top edges. So I'm gonna lay this on here and kind of match up where those pins are. Mine did shrink just a little bit, which is normal because we did do a lot of quilting. So this is why you want to do this extra step of putting the lining or putting the quilted piece right on top of the lining, because we want to make sure that our lining is the same size as our basket. So it is helpful if you want to put clips on, you can, to hold that. I've got some straight pins right here, so I'm just going to put a couple straight pins here to help hold these together, because I'm lined up really good along this top edge. And then that way I just need to trim a little bit down here along my bottom edge. So don't worry if it did shrink up a little bit, that is normal. There's not a lot to trim off, but just a little bit. And then I'm gonna put another pin down this side where this notch is that I need to cut out too, just to help hold that in place as well. Good, that feels nice and smooth. And then maybe just a couple more down here too. Make sure that's all smooth and tight as well. Okay, then let's trim this down. So this looks real close, but I just need to trim just a little bit off. And that again is probably because where we quilted it, it did shrink up just a little bit. So I'm literally just taking a little piece off of there. And this bottom edge also looks really close to even. It's just the tiniest little bit. But I want that lining to be the same size as my project. So just a little tiny sliver out of there. Now I need to cut these notches out here. I think I'm just gonna use my rotary cutter. You can use scissors, whatever you're more comfortable with, but you just wanna get in there and get that notch cut out too. That's also right along the edge of your project. It's a little trickier with that pin because that pin is holding up, but we'll make it work. Okay, and then one more notch to cut out. keep missing just that little inside corner. There we go. All right, so now our lining and our quilted piece are cut to the same size. So I'm gonna take these other pins out that we're holding those together, but I'm still gonna leave those 2 pins here on the center. So I'm leaving these pins in, so I know that that was how it matched up. Just a couple tips at the sewing machine. I do have a thread that matches my lining. So I just picked a light pink thread. So I do have a bobbin wound already and my thread over there. I also wanted to show you the handles just a little bit closer together. So this is the full 3" by 7.5 inch. I folded this in half, and then you can see I ironed that. You can see my pressed fold seam right there. And look at how frayed these edges are already. So I folded in half to get that center seam. Then I took this raw edge and this raw edge and folded it in to that center seam, and then pressed along this edge here too. So you can see I've also got these pressed there too. So it was first in half, then folded the raw edges in, then you're gonna fold it in half one more time. So you're making like this little tube, and you're totally hiding all of those raw edges. So I have this handle all prepped already with some pins to help hold it. So it's already all folded and ironed, but it isn't stitched yet. And see how this is the open side of that handle? I would recommend stitching along this edge first, about 1/8 of an inch away, and then stitch down this side too. So then your finished handle should look like this. There's no raw edges anywhere. Those are those folded edges, but it is stitched along that folded edge too, and it is just raw at the top and the bottom, but these 2 raw edges are going to be hidden inside of that lining when we make this handle on the basket. So I just wanted to make sure that you saw those handles a little bit better. So now we're going to sew those short sides. So again, this is our quilted piece folded along that long 6 square side. My pin is still on that original center, that top edge. What you want to look at when you're sewing this edge here is just flip it open and look for those seams, and try to make sure that this top seam and this bottom seam, that those are matched together. When we pieced this, we did make sure that we ironed one the one way and one the other way, so then we can actually nest it together. So that worked out great. More important that these seams are matched up together than if this top edge and this bottom edge of the quilted piece aren't matched perfectly. So pay attention to those seams. So I'm just gonna get that nested in there nice and tight. I'm gonna start stitching here and do a little back stitch here, stitch down towards where this open box is gonna be, but you don't need to back stitch on this end because we're gonna box it, we're gonna do more sewing. So pay attention to that seam, make sure that seam is exactly where you want it to be, and I do have these edges matched up. And then I'm using 1/4 of an inch. So I have my 1/4 inch foot on here. However you like to have for a 1/4 inch guide, that's what you want to use. And then I'm just gonna peek one more time to make sure that seam is matched up. So I'm gonna lose my foot pedal. I'm gonna start at the end here, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a reverse stitch at that end to make sure that end is nice and secured, and then stitch my way down. Just a little reverse, not a lot there. And then I'm gonna stop and cut my thread. Then we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna look at this side, and same thing, I'm just gonna open that up and I'm gonna make sure that those seams are nested together, nice and tight. Good, and again, I'm not worried about that top and bottom edge. Get that lined up in my machine. Go ahead and start, do a good reverse stitch, back stitch at the top up there. Peek one more time just to make sure those seams are matched up. And then stitch your way down. Good. Now we're gonna set this aside. We're gonna do the same thing with our lining piece. So I've got my lining piece folded in half along that long edge. There's nothing to match up here on this side, but I do wanna just make sure my fabric is nice and even along that edge. And we're gonna sew 1/4 of an inch on both of these. Back stitch at that top. Make sure this is all lined up. Okay, so we've got our lining seamed on this short 2 side, but we haven't done anything with this box part yet. And same thing. One more tip before we box, if you do have an iron system close by, it is a good idea to iron these seams open that we just sewed. But before you do that, you want to peel apart and just double check that your seam looks good where you stitched and make sure that's matched up good. So just peel these open and double check where those are intersecting together. So then I'm going to use my dear friend Laura. We love Laura Starr. She's one of our favorite ironing systems. So when I turn around, I do need to burp her. I hold the handle just to clear out that seam there. And then I am just going to take and just finger press this. Actually, it might be easier. Nope, I can't get that on the end. That's fine. I'm just gonna peel that out of my way. Let me get that so you can see that a little better. And we're just gonna press this seam open. I want to make sure you guys can see. So I'm just getting that nice and flat, nice and pressed open. And then same thing on this side. We're gonna press this one open. It's easier if I would put it towards me, but I want to make sure you guys can see it. And I absolutely love the steam in Laura Starr because look at how nice and flat that is gonna stay. I'm gonna do the same thing with the lining. This will be a little easier because there's not as much bulk. So we're gonna press this seam open. Flip that over. And press this one open. It just wants to fight me today. Then one more tip too is take your lining here, and I'm just going to make sure this is all nice and even, nice and flat, and I'm gonna press this center here too. Just press that down, get a nice crisp edge along that center there, because when we go to box these corners now, ooh, I need to fix this one. That one's kind of messy. Sorry, hold on just 1 second. Come here, fabric. Okay, so when we go to box, we're gonna take this fold here and we're gonna match it to that seam that we just pressed open. So we're gonna go back to the sewing machine. One more tip before we box. You wanna take this seam that we just sewed and pressed it open, find the center of that, and then peel this piece out and look right here for the center here on this part. So where these two pieces of fabric are coming together, find that part there and match those centers up. So I'm just gonna make sure that that's all lined up, and then I am gonna take a pin and I'm gonna pin that in place, maybe, to hold those together. It is a little thick, but make sure you get that pin. I did the same thing on that side of the quilted piece, and then I also prepared those pins on for my lining. So I took that open part and I lined it up to where we had pressed this center seam on that lining too. So now we are going to stitch these corners to box them out. You can see that when I cut, I did cut a little deep on here, but that's gonna be fine. We're gonna get that all caught in there. Make sure that when you are sewing this part, that you're back stitching here and you're back stitching here really well, because that is going to be the corners of your basket. You still want this to be 1/4 of an inch away, so I'm just lining up on my sewing machine here. I'm gonna start, I'm gonna go back and make sure that's back stitched really well. Then when I get to where the bulk of this seam is here, I'm gonna take that pin out of my way and just double check that that is all still lined up underneath of there, and make sure that my sewing machine doesn't flip that. I would also recommend back stitching over that center part too, where we had that seam. And then when I get to this edge, same thing, I'm gonna back stitch really good on that edge too. So I'm gonna cut that, flip that around, and do the same thing on this part. Get that lined up in there. Do a good back stitch when you start. Take that pin out and just, again, make sure that that's all lined up under there. Help feed that fabric so it doesn't flip it. Do a back stitch there. And then back stitch really good on that corner there. And that should box your bottom. Let's see how good I did. Ooh, I think that looks pretty even. That looks pretty close there. Let's check this one. Ooh, I like that one too. Perfect. So that looks great for our quilted part. I need to repeat that same boxing on my lining. So I'm going to just, this will be a little easier because it's not as bulky. Line up there, do a quick little back stitch there, take my pin out, make sure that's still lined up on that fold. Back stitch over that, back stitch over that. That looks great. Back stitch to start. Get my pin out of the way. Back stitch there. And back stitch at the end. Okay. Now our lining is also boxed. And I still have this pin here, so I remember where my original center was. I still have my pin here, so I remember where my original center for my top is. We need to attach the handles to the quilted piece before we put those pieces together, so just a couple tips with that. If you've got a little small ruler that has a nice 1/4 inch line, take this raw edge of the handle and slide that under. You can use chalk, you can use a friction pen, whatever you'd like, but just give yourself a little bit of a line here where a 1/4 inch is in from that handle there. So let me line up this side here. That's just gonna help us in the next step. So let me hold that up so you can see it a little better. So I just have a little 1/4 inch line by the raw edges of the handle. Then we're gonna take our quilted piece, and on the shorter side, I cheated already, there's one attached here. On the shorter side, we're gonna open that up, and I'm gonna take the raw edge of one of the pieces, and I'm gonna look at this square here, and I'm gonna line it up about in the center of this square, and I'm gonna put that line that I just put on the handle right even with the top edge of the quilt. So or the quilted piece, it is sticking out above like that. So I'm gonna find the center of this pink square here, line that up, and then I'm gonna use a straight pin, and I'm gonna pin that in place, but I'm gonna keep my pin a little lower so then I don't have to sew through it. And I'm going to pin on both sides of that, just to help secure it and help make sure that it's not going to twist at all. Then I wanna make sure that my handle isn't twisted, so when I pull this, I'm gonna make sure that it stays flat, so there's no twist to it. So make sure that that stays flat when you're pulling that to the other piece. So this is our shorter side, right? And I'm looking at this red checked fabric now, and I'm finding about the center of that red checked fabric, and I'm lining up the line that I just made along the edge there, and then pinning that in place. Okay, so those are both attached. Now when you sew, make sure that you backstitch on both sides really well on both sides of these handles. So I'm gonna keep this, I guess we could flip it, right? Would that make it a little easier? Sorry, I have an assistant in the background helping me that has made a couple of these before. So I'm gonna flip it just to make it a little easier to line up on my machine. You could also, if it's easier, I'm gonna pull this piece out of my way too, so I can get that in there better. All right, so I am going to start right along the edge here. I'm still using my 1/4 inch guide, and we're gonna backstitch on both sides of the handles. Let me see if I hold that down, you can see it a little bit better. And I'm just sewing right along that line that I made, and I'm just gonna cheat and keep sewing down this edge till I get to the next handle. Good, I'm gonna stop there, rotate this around and attach these other two handles. Okay, then I'm going to take all these pins out because that is all secured. Push that down because we want our quilted piece to be right sides out like this. And you can see those handle pieces are a little bit above my edge here like that. That's going to be all hidden inside of there. Before we finish top stitching, I came back to Laura Star. I want to help my lining make my life a little bit easier. So see how you can see this lining still? I want to push this down so it's even here, and then just my printed fabric, my quilted fabric is showing instead of that lining showing too. Total personal preference. If you want to have that little lining showing around that top edge, you can. It will make it just a little trickier when you go to close this gap that we left open if that lining is up, but it is totally your personal preference. So I'm gonna work this in and help get that lined up right along the edge. So I'm just gonna hold this here and then use Laura to help press that even. Let me clear out that seam first. Good. And you can press it either way. I kind of like the lining facing up because then I can see a little easier where I'm pressing that in place. Make sure that my handle piece is nice and smooth and press that down too. Good. Oh, that looks, look at how nice and crisp that is on that top edge. Then it is helpful here, so here's my gap. I do need to take this raw edge here and I need to fold it in and press this in about 1/4 of an inch. Let me see which way is the better way for you to see it. So I'm gonna hold this quilted part here and I'm gonna fold that over about 1/4 of an inch and press that in place. Then I can do the same thing with this raw edge of my pink lining too and get that pressed about 1/4 of an inch in as well. Then I want to pin that in place too to hold those together. Let me keep working this edge and get that a little bit more pressed flat too. Ooh, yeah, that looks great. Okay. Let's work this side. These handles are still fighting me, so let's work this side just a little flatter. There we go. And then if I give it a pull, those are gonna line up nice and straight. Let me do both layers. Oh yeah, that looks great. Then I'm gonna take just a few pins and help pin through both of those just to make sure they stay while we close that up and seal that up. Good. So that edge is nice and straight, nice and even, ironed down, and then this is where I still need to sew, but it's even along those top edges there. So we'll take it back to the sewing machine. Stop. Let's top stitch. I like about 1/8 of an inch away If you want a little more, you can. It's total personal preference, but I am gonna do it on this side where my pins are first. So I'm gonna get lined up on there, and I'm going past where I had back stitched before. So I'm making sure I'm on that back stitch side that's all sealed up there too. Then do a little bit of a back stitch, and let's start top stitching. It's a little bulky right here at this middle seam, so I'm gonna help it just get over that. And then I need to help my handle get under my foot. There we go. I don't know how well you guys can see that okay. I'm sure you've all top stitched before. I'm also just feeling underneath to make sure that that lining is nice and tight underneath, that I'm not getting any bubbles or twists or anything of that lining underneath too. Can kind of feel where those handles are too. Make sure those handles are all pressed in there nice and tight too. Good, we're almost there, home stretch. One more handle tucked under there. Little back stitch here too. Perfect. So just a little scant top stitching to help hold that all in place. I'm gonna come back through and clean up any threads. Then let's take it back to the ironing board just one more time. Just to help the basket hold its shape just a little better, come back to your iron and we're gonna iron out these seams here. So I'm gonna kind of get my hand inside, push that down, and I'm looking at where that seam is, and we're just gonna hit that one. Then we'll fold it around this way, make sure that is nice and even, nice and flat, and hit that one. Then we're gonna do our long sides. So we're gonna see where that seam is there. Make sure that's nice and even. Hit that edge. See where those meet up. Then take on the short side here, so see how nice and flat that is. There we go. Then I'm gonna take where my sides are here, and I'm gonna hit these sides too. All right, it is all done. Isn't that so cute? So I have a couple other ones to show you too. So Tina that works here at our store, she's obsessed with these and made a bunch of different ones out of a bunch of different fabrics. So whatever you've got lying around at home, there are so many different cute versions here. Christmas ones, 4th of July, all kinds of fun stuff. And think about how great of a gift this would be too. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this. Use whatever you've got, your long arm machine, your domestic machine, whatever you've got. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@quiltingconnection.com. You can give us a call, 262-723-6775. Don't forget to check out our website, quiltingconnection.com. Thank you so much for watching, and happy quilting!